Good afternoon, you guys. I am delighted to welcome each and every one of you here today as we celebrate a truly sweet success story. Today we shine the spotlight on Stony Bees Honey, a local bee farming business that has become the pride of Fallon, Nevada. Jason and Codie Stonebarger, the dynamic duo behind Stony Bees Honey, have been nurturing bees for over a decade. What began as a small venture with just a few hives has blossomed into a thriving family-owned and operated honeybee business. Their story is one of passion, dedication, and a deep love for bees and their environment. Stony Bees Honey is not just about producing honey, it's about ensuring the health and happiness of their bees. They have meticulously cultivated an environment where their bees can thrive, ensuring that from the hive to the flower and finally to your table, the process is as natural and as sustainable as possible. The result of their hard work is a range of honey products that truly capture the essence of their labor. Each jar of honey is a testament to the care and commitment that they have for their bees and their craft. It's no wonder why they have become the buzz around town. Please join me in welcoming Stony Bees Honey.
Woo! Hi guys, my name is Codie Stonebarger. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm loud anyway, so if I get too loud, we'll turn it down. I thank you guys so much for allowing me to spend the morning with you. Like Letitia said, we started as just a small venture. My husband went to purchase a log splitter and he came home with a beehive. So we didn't chop wood that winter. We made honey. So we originated out of California. We've been in Fallon, Nevada going on 10 years this year. We started the bees about 12 years ago. It's really grown into a family love, if you will. He does a lot of the beekeeping. I spend a lot of time in the hive as well. We have an almost 18-year-old and we have a 9-year-old, and they also spend time in the hive. So it truly is a family-run business from farm to table, if you will. I don't do anything commercially. Everything we do is small. It's all by hand. We move all of our hives by hands. We had grown to about 500 hives. We scaled back a little bit. And we sell locally. We sell here in Nevada. We keep all of our hives local, with the exception of taking some up kind of to the high country, kind of in the Sierras, but still on this side. We have to battle the bears up there. So we try to stay out of that country, but it makes really, really killer honey. I deliver some honey up to Tahoe, so we like to be able to kind of keep that local for them too, and the people really dig that. Everything else is down here in the valley. We don't typically set in the alfalfa. We keep everything in the deserts, and really on the true desert flower, if you will. So you'll notice that our honey, if you see it like in town or at the farmers markets or here, for example, it's oftentimes a little bit lighter than some of the honey you'll see that they pull out of the alfalfa. The alfalfa honey is a little darker. It has a little different taste. If you ever have a chance to try honey from any other states, do that and then compare. It's really fun. It's interesting to be able to taste kind of what they pull from the flower. To me, this is kind of cinnamony. We've lived south of Silver Springs for going about 4 years now, before we were at LaHontan Dam. So they still fly the same flower, but it's really interesting. The honey to me is kind of cinnamony, and I'm not sure where that comes from, but you guys will be able to taste later if you like, and that's fun. So we're gonna start out with just a few kind of like beekeeping, housekeeping terms, if you will. And then I'm gonna talk about a little bit about what the bee population is doing. I think ag is changing, not just environmentally with our weather and those sorts of things, but I think it's changing with technology as well. And I think there's a number of factors that we have seen go into bee decline over the last several years, especially in 2024. We saw the hive decline go from about 60 to 70%, which is devastating across the nation. You have to have bees to pollinate in California, the almonds. If you don't know, the production of almonds that come out of the state of California is huge. And it's not just huge to Nevada or huge to North Dakota or Florida, but it's huge to places like China and Japan and across the whole world. So if you don't have the bees to pollinate the trees, we aren't able to provide those things. And I think sometimes when people think of bees, they think simply just of honey. And I think we kind of forget that there's such a vast amount of things that have to be pollinated. And there are some things in almond trees now that they're doing that are a little different. You can plant trees that don't need pollination, but they don't produce the nuts quite like you like to see, like the old time farmer likes to see when you were able to bring in the healthy bees and really watch them do what they needed to do on the almond farm. So we've lost a lot of that, and I think it's really important that in 2025 we recognize that and kind of the factors that go into that. So starting off, we'll start with just a few things like in the hive, if you will. Has anybody ever spent time in a beehive? Raise your hand. Okay, so we have just one. Okay, we have two. A few. We have a few. Okay. So it's a super rad place, even if you're scared of bees. It's literally like the eye of the storm. I was just explaining to someone. There's a real peace when you're in the hive. It's very serene. What the bees do is very cool. Some people think it's science. I give it to God, if you will. I think it's exactly how the world should run, how the hive, what goes on in that hive. It's really something. So we have the queen bee, of course, and I have a painting here just to show she's a little bigger. This was one of our queen bees. Now a gal here in town painted this, but you'll notice if you ever have an opportunity to be in a hive, she's typically easier to spot. She's much longer. Her wings only come down about mid-waist, if you will. That all goes back to, she's built like that because when they choose her to be the queen in the hive, she is given something called royal jelly, which is a specialty like vitamin and nutrient, has a lot of other like technical terms that I'm just gonna be honest with you, I can't pronounce, but it goes into giving that royal jelly, and that goes back into the queen bee, and she's chosen by the hive to be that queen bee. And then you have the drone bees, so when the queen makes her mating flight, it's called, you have drone bees. Drone bees are the only male bee in the hive, okay? Their only job is to mate with the queen bee. Once they mate with the queen bee, they typically die. That's their only job. That's the only male bee you'll find ever in the hive. The worker bees are not male bees. So there's a lot of like controversy about that. But history says and science says the worker bees are female bees. They're just not, they were not chosen to be the queen. If your hive doesn't like the queen, they'll kill her. If she's a bad queen, they'll kill her. If she's not doing her job appropriately, she tells the hive what to do every day. Bees communicate through dance. You have to kind of read about that. They have little follicles on their head, and within those dances, they absorb those things, and it's really, that is the science part. You can read about that part, but it's really something. And so she tells the hive what to do every day. So the worker bees go out, they collect water, they bring the water back to the hive, they fan the hives, they keep the hives cool, all those sorts of things. In the winter, the hives shut down. We basically, the beekeeper, we rob the hive is what we do. We rob them of their honey. It's a terrible thing, but we do. And if you don't leave like 30 or 40 pounds of honey in your hives through the winter, you do have to go in and feed your bees. Bees are similar to cattle, I tell people. If you don't feed them and you don't move them around appropriately to the forage that they need, or maybe you have a field of flowers that die because of the freeze and you can move them 15 miles, especially in Nevada, because the weather changes on the side of the roads. So you can move them to feed them appropriately based off of forage. So we do a lot of moving around because, like I said, we don't drop in a lot of alfalfa fields, but we spend a lot of time in the desert and kind of the higher country to keep the flowers and to keep the desert honey and to stay out of town, if you will. The more time you spend in town, the more sprays you have. They burn a lot of ditches, so unfortunately you'll have hives that get caught up in those, and then they burn your hives and your bees. So we try to just stay out of town, if you will, and really keep our hives healthy and flourishing and doing their thing off the local, like true desert flower, if you will. So those are kind of housekeeping things, if you hear those terms, like the drones, the queen bees, those sorts of things. So I'm gonna kind of jump over to the ag piece of it. I think that's really important. And so, like I said earlier, in 2024, we lost 60 to 70%. We saw a decline in hives. And that has a lot to do with lack of housekeeping from commercial beekeepers. If you don't go in just like your cattle herds and check for things like pink eye and those sorts of things in cattle, it's gonna overtake your herds, right? So it's very similar in bees. There's things like mites. Aurora mites are terrible. They get in the hive and they'll just totally destroy your whole bees. You'll see them under a microscope just climbing on your bees. It's terrible, terrible. There's a lot of different diseases, and so we have 2 to about 2.6 million hives that are trucked in all the way from the East Coast clear to California every year for almond production. In the state of Nevada, you don't have to have the bees to pollinate the alfalfa. There is a bee that is called a leaf cutting bee, and it is typically what is used in the alfalfa fields, if you will. So you don't have to have the bees. The flower is beautiful in Nevada. You let it push a little longer here than they do in California because they have so many dairies out there, they cut sooner. So oftentimes after a pollination out there, and you have 2 to 2.6 million hives in California, all those hives are loaded back up on a truck and they're shipped back to their homes for the most part, but we have several thousand hives that come to the state of Nevada every year after California's pollination. I think it's great that we have beekeepers that want to grow bees and make them healthy again, and that's why they bring them to Nevada, because we have less population here, and because we do have a vast majority of ground because of alfalfa, and we do have farmers that do things like burn ditches as opposed to spraying them, because the sprays kill your bees so devastatingly, and they'll just come through and spray. We don't have a lot of airplanes that spray out here, so you don't have to worry about those factors like they do in California, because they spray overhead out there. They don't tell you they kill all your bees when they spray them. So those guys pack up and they come here. So I get a little passionate about it because I love our bees, and I'm super passionate about being like a small family-run beekeeping business and being able to provide like good, clean honey and like really give back that way. And so then you have a lot of guys that come here, they dump their thousands of hives on top of you, and then because they don't have the time to spend in their hives because they're so big, and they don't have the guys to come in and check their hives like they should for disease, the disease overruns. Maybe it doesn't hurt them to a guy who has 3,000 or 4,000 hives, but to folks like us who only have 400 or 500 hives, the disease will just wipe our small hives out. They come in, they overtake it, kills us out. So I think there's something to be said about that. I only bring that up not to get after the California beekeepers, but I do bring it up because I think it's something that we need to acknowledge. I think it's great that we have the beekeeping coming here, because we do have such a great place to be able to really build our bee health and do those things, but then we see decline on the smaller side of it as well. Excuse me, sorry. So I think it speaks really importantly to how we need like a little reform that way, and I think that we need to, on a larger scale, spend a little more time in our hives, really like tearing them apart and doing the work to keep them healthy. So with that being said, that's why, so we're grateful to be in the state of Nevada that way. We keep our hives here, we don't go to California, so our honey, or anywhere else for that matter, so our honey is always clean, it's always pure. Has anybody ever bought our honey or tried our honey? Besides Lauren? Okay.
It's amazing.
It's amazing, okay. I don't have a lot of it here in town, but you can always contact us directly, and I would be happy to get you guys some. So I think it's really important. I think that from an agricultural standpoint, I think as to where, when we talk about like long-term ag and how things are gonna look for crops and things that need pollination, I think it's really important that we focus on our bee health, and that we focus on those things to be able to grow healthy hives and to be able to produce healthy honey and to be able to do it right. I think 60 to 70% in decline is significant. It's so significant, and with that significance means if our bee decline is down that poorly, that means that our almonds will be down that much poorly. Any vegetables, if any of you grow gardens, some people will grow a garden and put one hive in there, and it truly makes a difference on your bloom and what they do for you. And so I think it's really important that we understand how they work and what they're doing, and that if we cut on our beehives and we cut on our bees, then we cut on our food production. And I think in a time right now where everything is skyrocketing, I think over time that will just lead to higher prices on a lot of different things. So I think it starts with clean, like anything, I think it starts with clean hives, clean beef, anything of that nature. So I think that it's just important, I think, to keep things healthy and clean and how they should be. If your hives are not healthy and clean and how they should be, the queen will die. If your queen dies, you'll either have a new queen rolled for you, they'll create their own queen, and she can oftentimes be very mean and aggressive when the hive rolls their own queen and creates one. Oftentimes they're mean, and you have to go in and kill your queen and then requeen her, and that can take time, and you lose so much production from your hive, if you will. It takes over 4,000 flowers for a honeybee to produce 1 tablespoon of honey. That's a lot of flowers. So it really is, like we talk about the gold rush, if you will. Honey truly is that, what it does and what the bees have to do to make this 3 pounds of honey right here is pretty incredible. And so that's why I always give it back to God, not science, because I think it's pretty incredible what they can do. You do have to go in, if you take your honey off your hives in the wintertime and you don't leave any, which some beekeepers do, you have to go in and feed them. So you create bee patties, they're called, and they have different vitamins and pheromones. Oftentimes you'll pull old honey or old brood and you create those and you smash them like pancakes. And you'll go in and you'll crack your hives in the wintertime, and you'll lay your wax, they lay on wax paper, and you'll lay them right on top of the hive so that the bees can eat. If you don't feed your bees through the winter time, especially in the state of Nevada, because it gets so cold here and you have such frigid temperatures, they'll freeze to death, you'll lose them. You'll go out and crack your hives and they'll be dead. And you're like, no. They shut down in the winter times. Oftentimes if you crack them in the winter, which we do because we do pull our honey, and we'll leave between 10 to 15 pounds of honey on each hive throughout the winter. But because we only leave that much, we do go in and have to feed them through the winter. And it's amazing because there's anywhere between 20 to 100,000 bees in a hive, and they'll be just in one itty bitty small ball because they have to stay warm. And so when you crack that hive, you'll be like, oh gosh, I hope they're in there. And you'll find this little, like this ball, and they'll just be swarmed in there. And you pretty much just pray through the winter and hope in the spring when you crack them and start to really get in there and work them, that they've opened back up and are moved out on those and they're starting to work again. The winter is scary in Nevada. Sometimes your bees shut down and you go to crack them and everything's dead. The winters are harsh here, and so they have to survive. When we came here, we had about 500 hives, and we told ourselves we'd have to just winter out and see what happens. We didn't build barriers around them. We didn't put hay, like some people will build like hay walls around them to help kind of keep them warm. We didn't do that. We let them live, if you will. We fed them through the winter, and we let them live, and we figured that like the toughest man will survive, basically, is what we did. The climate is very different coming from the west to out here in the desert over the mountain. And so we now have bees that are pretty much all crenolians, which is kind of a cross of bees, but they all seem to weather really well in the wintertime, and we just don't seem to have the loss like we did when we first came here. If you're ever interested in getting into bees, don't ever buy bees with African beehives from, they're called African bees. They're mean, they're vicious, they'll try to kill you. It's like Winnie the Pooh, like they will chase you and swarm you and try to kill you. So that's something to keep in mind. Do not buy African bees. If you're interested in beekeeping or you have questions, call me, I'll help you. Do not buy African bees, whatever you do. They can be very, very vicious. They're very, very, very hardy. So they'll go out, they'll work for you. Like they will kill themselves for you. They'll give you their soul, but they're very, very vicious. And so when you have to get in and actually work your hives and get in there and do your stuff, they get very, very angry with you. So you have a catch-22 because they're super hardy, but they're also super mean. So you have to pick your lesser evil, if you will. We chose to get rid of our African hives because they were so mean, and then we let everything else weather. So we are in pretty good shape that way, I feel like now. You lose some because some are weaker than others. Maybe some have more numbers. Maybe some do have 60,000 bees in there, and maybe some only have 40,000. And so because it gets so cold, they're not able to ball up, and that lack of bees doesn't allow for them to stay warm, if you will, through the winter. But for the last couple years, knock on wood, if you will, even with the harsh colds we've had, they weather themselves pretty good. In the springtime, you come in, you crack them, and you kind of start to slowly work them. They'll start to wake up, like bears, they kind of come out of hibernation, they start moving in there. You'll be able to hear them, like if you stick your ear down to your hives, coming out of winter into the springtime, you'll start to hear them kind of fluttering in there. You can hear them moving around. And coming out of the spring, we harvest twice a year when it comes to honey. The hives produce anywhere between about 80 to 120 pounds of honey. Like I said, we do everything by hand, so it's a slow process for us because we don't have any equipment. I weigh about 120 pounds, so the boxes weigh about equivalent to me. You have to be really careful moving them because you can't manhandle them. You make the bees mad, and then they attack you, and you can't squish them, which is also hard if you can't manhandle them. So the whole moving the hive thing for me is kind of hard because they're big and heavy, and I'm not so. And then you'll pull your frames. We pull our frames, we have a spinner, we'll drop them in. Has anybody ever watched honeybees spun down or anything of that nature? No, okay, it's a really cool process. The first time you watch, you're like, there's no way you're gonna get this honey off this frame, okay? And then you do, you pull it and you stick it, and the heat and the movement, it's amazing how it just drips off. And it's a big stainless steel cylinder, and you pull. Has anybody seen a frame of honey before? I should have brought a frame of honey. Okay, that's what I should have done. So they're cool. I was gonna bring an observation hive, but if I pull one right now, I'll kill my bees in that hive because they struggle to go into the observation hive and then out of the observation hive. So I opted not to do that, so I'm sorry. But if you pull a frame, it's typically covered in bees, and you shush them. You have to shush them off, okay? And then we harvest everything inside a building. We have kind of I don't know, it's just an old concrete building. So we harvest everything inside. you want the bees as far away from your honey frame so you don't lose them when you drop them in. It's a big stainless steel tub. We'll pull 10 frames at a time and drop all 10 in. You plug it in, turn it on, and it spins really fast. And the heat and the movement from the stainless steel tank, it draws all the honey out of it. On occasion, I will go out and cut comb. Has anybody ever ate comb? Honeycomb right off the frame? Okay. So we do some farmers markets. Those are the best stories for me. We'll have folks come up and tell us stories about when they were little and their parents or grandparents would give them the comb like as a treat. It was like their little treat, and it's like bubble gum, really. You pop it in your mouth and you chew on it and all the honey comes out. It's like a waxy thing. Kids love it. I don't know what it is. They just buy it off the table at the farmer's market like it's the best thing since sliced bread. I don't know, but it's fun. So on occasion I'll harvest some of that and go that route too. My most favorite part about this whole thing is the people, is being able to go to the farmers markets and like make the connections with people and have them tell me their stories and share with them about maybe their beekeeping story or about how their great-grandfather was a beekeeper or how important honey was to them because on Sundays they got to eat it on toast and that was a treat to them or whatever it may be. And I think honey is nostalgic, and I think we're in a time where we've lost so much of that, all the way down to like, even the new way of farming is so different compared to maybe how some of you in the audience farmed at one point in time, or how some of us saw the land at one point in time. And I think honey is nostalgic. It's done the same way now as it's always been done, if you will. With the exception of some of the equipment, because we do have forklifts and all the fancy stuff. But at the end of the day, I have 90-year-old men tell me stories about keeping bees with their great-grandfathers, and what they did is no different than what I go in my shed and do. So for me, that's the specialist part about this, because I think that's a real connect to a real disconnect of people and the world of what we've lost. And so that's been my most favorite thing to take away from this. It's super hard work, beekeeping. It's a science. Once you figure it out, you figure it out. Bees do two things: they reproduce and they make honey. That's what they do. So like, once you figure out how to keep them alive, well, you better figure out what to do with this, because you're gonna have an abundance of it, if you will. But that's what they do. So like, it isn't rocket science, but on some level, it is rocket science, and it's a lot of work. It's heavy, it's hot. You have to spin honey on your hottest days of the year. So my family loves me when it's 120 and I'm like, come on out, we gotta spin honey right now. It's the perfect temperature, you know, it's like baling hay. You know, the hay farmer's like watching the weather and the earth and then talking to God. He's like, when do I do it? And he tells you. So it's an interesting, it's been a really interesting venture for us. My husband is a farrier by trade. He shoes horses for an actual living. So that's why we scaled back, because he can be a full-time farrier and a full-time beekeeper, and I can't beekeep alone because it's too heavy, okay? And I can drive a forklift, but that's a whole nother cup of tea. So we did opt to scale back. So we have about 200 or 300 hives. I do a lot of the farmers markets here in town. We we go to the schools and do some like educating and fun stuff that way for the kiddos. I think beekeeping is kind of a lost art, if you will. If you read about beekeepers online from the West Coast to the East Coast, you'll hear the same names of beekeepers over and over and over. It's like rodeo cowboys. The famous ones are who they are. So beekeepers are kind of the same, and I think that they're gonna go one day, and then what? And so in the decline of bees, we also have a real decline in beekeepers. And it can be really hard to become a backyard beekeeper because people are scared of bees. So it's not like, I want to have cows, so you go buy a few cows, you find a pasture, you turn them out, you let them grow, you take them to the sales yard, especially right now, you do really well. But so bees are different because they're scary, they bite, they sting. But I promise you, it is a really rad venture. You'll learn a lot about, it's taught me more about, I've been in farming my whole life, working the bees and seeing the backside of what the bees do for the farmer has been really cool for me, because growing up in California, we did spend our time in the almond fields and on the tractors and on the sprayers and those sorts of things. So to understand, like I said, when people think of bees, I think a lot of times I think of honey, and there's such a forgottenness about, like I said, about the almonds and about the other things that they do pollinate. In Florida, they pollinate huge orange population of orange trees in Florida. All kinds of bees in Florida. It's crazy to me that we keep bees in Florida on orange trees, but we do. And they have orange honey, and if you ever have a chance to try it, do so. It's phenomenal. So it's really interesting, like living out here, it's so simple to just know what you know, if you will. And so I didn't know about the bees that they put like in the leaf cutting bee and alfalfa. I had to educate myself about that when I moved to Nevada. I was clueless. So for me, it's really neat to teach myself and to read about bees in places like North and South Dakota. Well, it gets pretty frigid there. The things they do back there to keep their bees alive is phenomenal, okay? They're in like inside buildings with air filter systems and all kinds of things just to keep them going. So I think the beekeeper at the end of the day is a really, really like hard-working testament to the world, if you will, and to ag and to production. Sometimes I think we just kind of forget about the bee, if you will, and we just kind of look at the paycheck, if you will, because pollination is such a cash out. It's such a cash out. And it's great for the beekeepers. I just think that sometimes we need to remember to like kind of stay small and stay Fallon, if you will, out here. And just remember how important it is that like, without these guys doing their job, of course not on everything, we don't have to pollinate everything, but there are so many things. I grew a huge garden this year and I dropped some beehives in it. I've never done that. I have a really hard time growing a garden out here in the desert. I don't know about the rest of y'all. If you have some tips, please share them with me. Because I grow this big green garden, but nothing ever produces off of it. So this year I did, I threw some beehives in there and oddly I had different results. Yeah, you're shaking your head, okay? So I had different results and so that was really fun for me to see, even for me, like why didn't I do that sooner? Like I should have done that, but I did it. And we just battled some things here like the weather and the garden and what have you. But, so I know I had some other fighters against me, but I was really surprised by like, and it was fun to watch them and then pull my honey and know that like maybe they did pull some stuff off my garden flowers or I let my basil go to flowers. So like, you never know. But I don't know, it's been a fun venture. I enjoy it. I plan on probably never selling the bees. We'll probably always have some hives, even if it's not 200 or 300. But yeah, that's kind of my story and kind of a little bit of info about the bees. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, go for it. He's gonna hit
you.
You
go to a restaurant and you see these little packages of honey.
Yeah.
Is that real honey? Is there artificial honey?
It is artificial, okay? So we have contemplated doing that. My husband would love to get the packages and the little package machine to do that, okay? He thinks that's the coolest thing. He would love, he's like, you don't want local honey in your pancakes, right? But no, it's coming from China more than likely, and it's water-based. It's water and sugar is more than likely what it is. I hate to say that out loud, I know, but more than likely, even at Walmart, like now I'm a little picky, but if you're not buying it straight from the farmer, even the big time commercial farmers, you figure they spin that stuff down, they have thousands and thousands of pounds of honey. Well, they're not in the business for honey, they're in the business for pollination. So they could care less about this, so they just spin it down into 50-gallon drums, put it in a shop, and let it sit, and they'll sell it. Like, say you called the guy and you were like, hey, I want to buy a 50-gallon drum of honey. It's about 700 pounds. It's about $1,300. You pay him your $1,300. He brings you your honey. You put it in this jar right here, and you're a beekeeper, man. You're making honey. So you got to be careful because there's so many people that do that. There's right down to the restaurant. You follow me? Like right down from the restaurant all the way up to some of your farmers markets, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, tell me about your bees. And they're like, we don't have bees. And you're like, well, what are you doing then? How are you selling honey at the local farmer's market from farm to table if you don't have bees, right? So it's very similar. It's just the big time commercial, they make it that way. Because they're not worried about this. They don't have the time to process it, bottle it. It takes me days to spin down honey and put it in a bottle because I do it all by hand. So it's days worth of work. Well, even with good equipment, it's still gonna take you days to fill thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of honey. So they're just like, heck with it, stick it over there. But that stuff in the packets in your restaurants, more than likely, it's not honey. It's coming from China and it's water and sugar. And they're just mixing that stuff up nice and good, making it gooey. But even at your local stores, like I said, you see a lot of that. Like, we'll get honey. I'll order honey sometimes, like from Hawaii, and have it shipped to me, like in bottles, just to try it, just for like the heck of it, to see. And oftentimes, even then, you'll find, because like right now, this is pretty crystally, right? Like you don't have a lot of movement to it, so that's your best way to know. If you pick up a jar of honey in December and you flip it over and it's like water, so chances are it's been hard and reheated, hard and reheated, hard and reheated, because that's what it turns into. All you're doing is you're taking all your good stuff out. So if you want it for like cooking or for like you take a teaspoon of it a day for your allergies or anything like that, well, every time you get it hot and bring it up to a certain temperature, you're cooking it right on out of there. So if you ever, because natural honey will always crystallize, okay? It's the sugar in it. So if your sugar content is more, it's gonna crystallize faster. If your sugar content is less, it's gonna take longer to crystallize, so it's gonna stay thinner. If your content is less, chances are it's been reheated and warmed up and it's gooey and ooey for a reason.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Anybody else have any questions? Eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
Okay. So you had said last year there was 60 to 70%
Yes.
die off over winter. What is a more normal winter like?
About 30 or 40%. Yeah. You're gonna lose some regardless. So that's a really good question, because you're gonna have a decline over the winter no matter what, because it's cold. There's so little, they can only do so much, right? We can only feed them so much. So even if as a beekeeper, you're truly beekeeping, like you're truly doing your job as a beekeeper, you're still gonna lose some. That's just the way, it's like cattle, okay? It's like the same kind of, you're gonna be like, man, what did I do there? What did I go wrong? I did exactly that hive that I did to the other 200, but I lost it. So you're gonna have that. Maybe it was a weaker hive. Maybe the queen wasn't as strong, you follow? Queens last typically 2 to 3 years. They can last up to 5. We'll go in and re-queen every hive anywhere between about a year to 2 years. Your queens they lay up to 1,500 eggs a day when they start. Over time, excuse me, they start to decline. So all those things kind of come into factor. You follow the queen, your worker bees, how good they're doing their job. Are they bringing in enough water? Are they keeping the hive cool in the summertime? Because you'll lose them in the summer too. They'll get too hot, they'll suffocate. If your bees, if you have a beehive, you say, and you're like, yeah, look at my bees, they're killing it. And you're like, oh no, my bees are starting to outgrow their house. You'll start to see them. They'll be all around their little porches, we call them, like where they go in and out. They'll be all on the boxes, and you'll be like, holy cow. Go and split your hive. You gotta go in and you gotta pull frames out of there, and you gotta make a new hive, if you will. And to make a new hive, you pull X amount of frames, you drop them in a new hive, you put frames of brood and that sort of thing, and they'll start to lay. Otherwise, your bees will pack up their stuff and they'll leave their house pretty much. And you'll come out to your bee and be like, whoa, my bees swarmed. They're gone. They're completely gone. You can't find them. The whole hive is gone. Sometimes your neighbor finds them in their tree or something of that nature, okay? We collected a swarm on accident when we were in California. I was at my mom's. We were in the backyard. I looked up, and I'm not kidding when I said there was like a tornado of bees. We had a few hives in their yard, and I'm like, holy cow. And I mean, they were just, it was a tornado. And so I called my husband in a panic, and he said, put an empty hive out there and let it sit. When the sun goes down, I bet they go to it. And sure enough, that's exactly what they did. So it was interesting. But back to my point, about 30 to 40% is normal. So 60 to 70 is really climbing up there. It'll be really interesting to look at like the Department of Ag statistics come this time next year for what 2025 actually looks like. I'm curious to know what it's gonna do that way. The thing is too, is you have to have queen production. So there's a lot of beekeepers that create, that make their own queens, if you will, okay? And then you gotta go to them and buy queens. Well, to buy one queen is about $35 a queen. So if you have 1,000 hives and you gotta go in and you gotta re-queen all your hives, well, $35 on 100 queens is gonna cost you. You follow? So you'll find where guys cut corners and that kind of stuff, and they lose hives because they're trying to cut corners financially, which in the long run probably costs them financially more because they're trying to cut corners. Yes, go ahead.
Going back to the crystallization, how do you recommend reheating it?
Okay.
To
Usable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if it's in glass, drop it in put some water on the stove.
Okay.
And like, I always try to use like a little, you know, like in an Instapot, they have the little thing that goes on the bottom of the Instapot. So I'll try to find something, wire, like some sort of, because I don't like to put my glass right on the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like to put it on the bottom. But you can drop it just like a warm pot of water and let it sit in there, and it'll bring it back to life. Don't put it in the microwave. Now, you can do this old-fashioned trick. You can turn your oven on and pull your door down and leave your door down in your oven, and you can take this and like set it back towards the end of the door, and it's just gonna warm it enough to get it moving. It's not gonna bring it to like 80 degrees where you're burning everything out of it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, even me, like when we spin honey down, I spin it down. I don't like to spin down into 50-gallon drums because I can't move them. So once I have 700 pounds of honey in a 50-gallon drum, I can't do anything with it other than scoop it out of there because I can't move it. So I'll try to spin that in a 5-gallon bucket so I can get them moved around or what have you. But even myself, I have to put them in a warming room sometimes because you have to, because it crystallizes, you have to. So I never get it hot, but I have like a warming room. I'll turn a heater on it or whatever, and I'll put the whole bucket in there and let it get warm to where I can like work it and move it and get it in a jar or what have you. But oftentimes people will come to our tables at the farmers market and they'll do this. at first I'm like, what are they doing? You know, 12 years ago, I'm like, I was clueless. I'm like, what are you doing? It moves, it's honey. So I had to educate myself over the years or whatever, but yeah, that the more crystallized, in my opinion, the better, if you will. You just know it's more authentic, it's more real to what you're actually getting. Anybody else? Yeah, you go first.
In the wintertime when it gets too cold for the bees, will people rent them out to people in warmer weather areas to let them continue on?
So that's a really good question because no, it won't, okay? And I don't know why, other than this. Say for instance, do you live in the state of Nevada?
Yes.
Okay, so you've lived here for years, right? You live here. So if you were to pack up tomorrow and move to Florida, your body would be like, oh, it's humid out here. I got to adjust a little bit. And it would take you time, right? Like if you worked out and ran every morning in Nevada, you probably wouldn't go out in Florida and like hit the deck running because your whole temperature, your whole life's going to change. You're like, whoa, the humidity, the air, everything's a little different. So I would go out on a limb and say, don't quote me on it, for myself, I wouldn't haul my bees somewhere necessarily warmer in the winter because once I get them acclimated to that, I got to bring them back here. And I don't have the cost to put my bees on a truck, or for me to put my bees on my own truck and haul them there is super costly to like a small guy like me, right? So my guess would be that's why they don't do that, is because I think that once you get them moved to somewhere warmer, well, now you're gonna bring them from a super humid, like I'm using Florida as an example, just because it's so warm there through the year. If they're there in the winter, well, shoot, it's 75 degrees in Florida in the wintertime, and super humidified, right? So then even if I let them winter there and I bring them back here and drop them back here in the springtime, well, now I'm right back here in this super dry desert. So they're gonna have to acclimate to that, no different than you or I would, or a horse would, right? Like we've hauled horses to the Midwest. I literally have watched horses perform at lower levels in the Midwest than they do here, and a vet will tell you they can't breathe. I don't know the science behind that, okay? I don't know if it's real, that's what the vet tells me. My guess would be that's why. They pull out of California in February and come here right to the spring, you follow? So guys in California are wintering in California because it's warmer out there than it is here. The dryness here is what's tough on us. You would think the humidity helps them. The humidity helps keep that little bit of like moisture in the air. The dryness here sucks the life out of the bee.
So even Mexico would be too big of a climate change?
I never thought of that. I don't know. That's a really, really good, that I don't know. Somewhere maybe like from here to Arizona in the wintertime, maybe that would be okay because we have similar climates that way. Like it's the desert, it's dry. So that's a really, really good point. And I don't really have an answer. I'd have to do that. I'd have to play with that one. And I know nothing about Mexico, okay? Like I would be lying if I said I did. So as far as climate and what have you, if you could get away with that, you're gonna run into some like Department of Ag, that kind of stuff. But that Arizona, New Mexico, that's not a bad idea. It's not a bad theory. I haven't thought of that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
If we can just get one more question.
Yes.
I know me, I'm ready to eat.
I am so sorry. I will talk all day. Just shut me up, okay?
But if any of you guys who want to continue to
Yes.
have a conversation,
You come visit.
definitely, sure.
Yes, you go ahead.
This might be a really dumb question.
There's none of those.
I don't know how you make the bee.
Okay. Wow. I knew there was going to be a question that just like flat stumps me. Okay. So I don't have an answer for you. So in the hive you have, so on your frames are plastic, okay? They're typically, in like 2025, mostly the frames are plastic. In the olden days, they were wire. Okay, they had wooden frames and they were wire. So in the plastic frames, they look just like this, okay? The whole frame looks like that, okay? So in those little holes, the worker bees create this, yes. And so but I don't know how to tell you how it's actually made. Like I can tell you how the queen is made because they create her, but she's given royal jelly. How the actual little bees are made, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. Like I really don't have an answer for you.
I just wondered how they populate.
I'm really gonna have to educate myself on. Well, so like once you have your queen and she takes what's called a mating flight. So she'll go out and she'll leave the hive once she starts to fly, and the drones will mate her. So they'll breed her, if you will, okay? And she'll go back to her frame, her hives, and she'll start to lay. And so she'll lay up to 1,500 bees a day. Yes. So at that time, so when they lay, you'll look in these holes right here, and you'll see these, they look like worms, like little white worms, and they're little larvas, and they're creating, and then you watch the cycle of the bee create. So she'll lay her 1,500, and then the worker bees will choose which one of those is gonna, she's already in there, but they choose the other worker bees, and then they choose the queen bee when there isn't one, and they give her royal jelly, and it has like vitamins and all this other kind of stuff in it, and it allows her to create her ovaries and those sorts of things, and that's how the queen bee is chosen. They'll also kill their queen bee if they don't like her, or if she's not doing her job, and then they'll create a new one for you. It's really interesting. But she'll lay up to, so that's that part, is she'll lay 1,500 eggs a day, and then they
lay in a separate little
cups. Yep, they're all laid. So you'll pull a frame and you'll see them. You'll see all these separate little compartments, and you'll see like all these little, they look like little white larvas, if you will. You can see them right in there. It's really, really something. It's really something.
like the cutter bee. They do it a little bit different.
Okay, see, and I'm not familiar. That's true, yeah. I'm
But I
not,
mean, you know, they still lay you an egg and.
sure. And do that, yeah. So that's kind of, if that helps you. Does that help you?
Well, yeah.
Kind of.
I just couldn't imagine how all those little bees get made so.
Yes, so quickly. And when you're laying 1,500 eggs a day, that makes a lot of sense that way, yeah. So it's I mean, you figure in a week's time, for crying out loud, you've laid 8,000 babies, you follow? And so that's why they populate so quickly, because once they start laying and stay healthy, they really start laying.
So when you put those new hives out there,
Yes.
then that's when the eggs are gonna.
Yes, so like an empty hive, like if there's an empty hive,
Yeah.
yes, so if you have like, just say you have a box, you have your box and then you have your frames. To start that, you would typically have to, like say you didn't have any bees, you were gonna go out and buy a hive, right? And you're gonna buy your hive, you're gonna buy that hive, probably with 10 frames, because they're typically 10 framer hives, 10 or 12, and you're gonna have a handful of frames that you're gonna buy already with living bees in it, either with a live queen, or you're gonna buy the hive, and in that hive, you're gonna buy a queen, and the queen comes in a little box, like this, and it's typically either rolled like in wax, or something of that nature, and you set that bee down on one of those frames, and they're gonna eat her out of there. Okay, over time, they're gonna eat that out of there, and she's gonna come out of there, and that's when she takes her flight, her mating flight. That's when the drone will mate her, and then she'll come back to the hive, and then she'll start laying to fill that hive. Yes, so you always gotta start with some brood. You'll have a couple frames of brood, and you'll have a couple frames of bees when you buy like your first hive. Once they start producing, now when your bees outgrow your box and they start to be everywhere, you gotta split them. So you pull a couple of those frames full of bees from your 10 framer, and they call them splits, and you make a new hive, and that's how you capitalize your hives and start to grow off of them. Yes. No problem. Yes.
Now, can I
Oh. I'll go fast.
I missed the part of how the egg is fertilized. Does she self-fertilize?
She does.
Who covers her?
Who covers her? Okay, so
Thank you.
yes, okay, so say you have a frame, you have a 10 frame hive, and in that 10 frame hive, say we have no queen, they're gonna create their own queen, okay, they're gonna roll their own. Because if I don't put one in there and they don't eat her out and she doesn't take her flight, you're gonna have a queenless hive. So you have a box, you have all your worker bees, so they're gonna choose her. So it's called royal jelly. So if you read about royal jelly, it will tell, okay. So that's how they choose, so the worker bees choose her. They're like, you're gonna be a good queen. I think you're gonna be the best. How they do that, I don't know. The science behind that, I don't know that I can even tell you, or you can find it on Google, okay? They're gonna pick her and be like, she's a good queen, we want her. So the worker bees are gonna feed her royal jelly. They're not gonna feed any of the other babies that royal jelly, any of those other larvae. Only that one they're gonna go to. And they're gonna keep feeding it to her. And if she doesn't have that her whole lifespan, she dies. So queens are they're the only bee in the hive that will be fed the royal jelly. It gives them, there's pheromones, there's hormones in the royal jelly, there's vitamins in the royal jelly. People come to me and beg for me to buy, and I'm like, I cannot get that from them. Like that and pollen, I can't get that from them. It's too hard for me, okay? So they'll choose her, and then once they start feeding her the royal jelly, there's something about the royal jelly in that cell that they've chosen that the royal jelly helps create the ovaries in the egg, in the queen bee and everything, which allows her to be, it's a work of God, I tell you. Like it truly, truly, it's something, yes. So that's, so they choose her that way. Yes, no problem, absolutely. Yes, okay, we're good. He's telling me we have to eat. I can take no more questions.
So
Okay.
you got